chosen a sitcom episode and the other guy has no idea what it's going to be. Will they already know it? Will they love it? Can they be convinced that it's worthy? Let's find out on the Sitcom Showdown. Hello everybody, welcome back to Sitcom Showdown. This is Jeff is here and you're here, Steve.
Hello, dear listeners.
We're going back nearly 60 years this week.
What?
Yep. To the very beginning of
television was
sitcom.
Invented 60 years ago.
You know it was. So we're going back, we could have gone back to 1957, but we're not. We're going back to 1961, but I'm rounding it off to 60 years.
Wow.
To watch an episode of Hancock.
Wow. Not
Hancock's Half Hour or anything like that. So,
this will be an education then?
Have you ever watched any before?
No.
No? Okay, do you know anything about it?
No.
Do you know what Hancock's first name is?
Tony.
Yeah, Tony's, okay.
And that was about it. Yeah.
Alright, can you name any other people who are in it?
No.
Okay, fair enough. Well, that applies to the episode we're going to watch.
What? I wouldn't know anyone.
You wouldn't know because, well, I'll go into it. Anyway, from 1961 on the BBC in the UK, we've got Hancock, which at this point, I've selected an episode called The Blood Donor, and that's the second last episode he ever did, which I was shocked to find out. But he'd been going since the 50s, and, you know, Sid James was in it and all these other regular characters that they had. But by this point, he'd sort of gotten rid of everybody, and this series is pretty much him on his own in certain situations. And they'd have their stable of character actors who'd come in and play different characters each week depending on what he's doing and everything.
So his character stays the same?
So his character stays the same.
Right.
Hancock. In the same way that Seinfeld is Seinfeld.
Mm-hmm.
Hancock is Hancock. I mean, there's a few, over the years before, there'd been a few variations on that, because he might have a job one week working in a petrol station or whatever, but then in most of the weeks, he was just him being a struggling comedian or whatever. Anyhow, so there's no Sid James or Bill Kerr or other people who know more about Hancock would poke holes in what I'm saying, but the point is he's on his own in different situations. Yep. So in other episodes of this series, you know, there's just one of him in his flat trying to amuse himself. Another one where he's stuck in a lift with a bunch of different people in BBC Television Centre. And another one where he's an actor on a radio show like The Archers or whatever. But in this one, he's just going to give blood.
Sounding more and more like Seinfeld.
It is a bit.
And you tell me the whole episode is him stuck in a lift.
Pretty much. So the writers are really important in this one.
Yeah.
So it's Galton and Simpson who went on to do Steptoe and Son and all that, and they're sort of revered as being awesome. And they are awesome. Hancock, the character in this show, he's sort of, you know, a snobby but commonish sort of dude who always, not in a Mrs. Bouquet way, but he aspires to be or tries to give the impression that he's better than he is. So he'll tell tall stories or just try and associate himself with anything that can slightly raise his status or give him some prestige. And so then he can be snobby in that Mrs. Bouquet way, even though he's common as muck. But yeah, at this point of Hancock, because he'd sort of pushed everyone out of the sitcom and sort of in some ways out of his life, he's left on his own, and the writers sort of seized on this, and I don't know whether Tony could see it or not, but they put him in situations that, you know, he seems like an isolated dude, and that's why he goes to do these different things every week to sort of be in contact with people.
So, art's imitating life in some ways.
But it must have been in a subtle way, otherwise he might have looked at the scripts and said, what's going on here?
Yep.
You're taking the piss. Which isn't very good. Cast. Right, I've just said that there's no regular cast, but they have their stable of people. Now, obviously, Tony Hancock's in the cast, and he started out doing entertainment during the war, but his dad was sort of a comedian and a hotel owner, which I think is a nice way of saying publican, but I'm not sure. So he did radio during the war with like gang shows and stuff. Then post-war, he did stand-up and more radio. That was in 54, and then 54, when Hancock's Half Hour started on radio.
Right, well, that rings a bell.
And then 2 years later, it was on TV. But they kept going with the radio series, which was separate to the TV series.
Yeah.
That's how successful he was. So he was the biggest name out there, more or less. I just want to add in some more history.
Yep.
So forgive me if I repeat myself here on previous points. But yeah, I was surprised to learn it was the second last episode of Hancock did for the BBC. because it's the same show, but they just changed the name from Hancock's Half Hour to Hancock because they had to shorten the length of the episodes to 25 minutes. So they obviously thought, false advertising, we better just rename it.
They could have just made it the Hancock Roundabout half an hour or something like that.
Exactly. So this is the 7th series, and then he split from writers Galton and Simpson. And as I mentioned before, he'd gradually been pushing his co-stars out of the series, and he wanted to do different things because he felt that it was all becoming just a series of catchphrases they had to trot out in episodes and stuff like that. I don't know if that's the case because you look back and there's some great stuff. But yeah, you had Kenneth Williams coming in and he'd do his, stop mucking about and all that sort of thing. So, anyway, but then when he split from Galton and Simpson, Tony retained his comic talents, which are what make the show, but the writing is so good that anything else he does after that's not going to work as well. And he moved over to the other side. He went to ATV and obviously didn't have the same writers and things. But then he did a film called The Punch and Judy Man, which was quite successful. But it all started going downhill. And, he started drinking more and all his relationships had fallen apart and everything. So a few years later, it was really going bad. And then he went out to Australia to film Hancock Down Under, 2 series of that for Channel 7. But he was in just an awful state, and the doctors had said, listen, if you keep drinking, you're going to be dead in 3 months because your liver's pretty much shot. So he thought, maybe if I go away to Australia, I'll...
Oh, they've been saying that to Shane McGowan for...
Have they?
25 years.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
But in Tony's case, it was right, was it?
Well, no, not really. Well, yes, it was, but it didn't really work for him coming out to Australia and getting a fresh start because then one of his divorces came through and these sorts of things, and he ended up committing suicide after filming 3 episodes. And he was 44 years old, and then that was it for him. So
it's a bit of a tragic story.
It's a totally tragic story, yeah. It's all a bit depressing.
Yeah.
So within, 5-6 years, he's gone from the top of the heap to killing himself in Australia. And I watched an episode or 2 of Hancock Down Under, and it's complete rubbish.
Yep.
And even Hancock himself couldn't save it. Let's move on from that.
Yeah, that's put me in a bit of a downer now.
It has. Oh. June Whitfield is English TV and comedy royalty. Do you recognise the name?
No.
No.
What was she in?
Oh, she was in everything, basically. So that I don't know that. I know that doesn't narrow it down, but you would have seen her in lots of stuff. Doctor Who, for a start. She was within the David Tennant era. And she was in a few episodes.
So she must have worked for a long time then.
Oh, yeah, she's worked for ages. So she's instantly recognisable if you know her.
So these people we're talking about now, they're in this episode?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
She was in... I'm just listing sitcoms. She was in Beggar Thy Neighbour for ages. She was in Carry On films and stuff. She was in Happily Ever After for 5 years. She was in Terry and June for 8 years. She's the star of these, by the way. She was in Absolutely Fabulous for 5 years.
Right.
So she was the mum.
Okay.
And she was in Benny Hill and all sorts of things. But on screen, listeners, we're just watching some Are You Being Served before we watch Hancock. And on screen is Captain Peacock. That's the next person I'm going to talk about. So Captain Peacock there, a young Frank Thornton, he's in this episode of Hancock that we're about to watch.
He's young on the screen here.
He is, well, yes. Captain Peacock there, this would be let's say 20 years after he did Hancock, if this is 81 or something like that. Let's say it is. And so he was in Last of the Summer Wine for 13 years. And in Are You Being Served for roughly 13 years.
Wow.
So he's been in sitcoms.
Yeah.
We know that. And he's been in Steptoe and Son and The Goodies and all that. Then there was Grace and Favour, which was the sequel.
Spin-off from this?
Yeah. All right, another person in it is Hugh Lord, who also had his own sitcom. Very good character actor. He was always in work. And he always comes up as different characters in Hancock episodes. He was in Citizen James, which I'm guessing is a Sid James vehicle of some sort. But he had his own sitcom for 5 years called Hugh and I.
Right. With
a bloke called Terry Scott. And Terry Scott was in both of those sitcoms with June Whitfield, like Terry and June.
Yep.
Now, there's another guy in this who plays a doctor. And his name's Patrick Cargill, who I didn't know anything about. But he had his own successful sitcom starring as Father in Father Dear Father, and then Father Dear Father in Australia.
Oh.
And he was so sought after for his comic timing and how good he was at his roles, apparently, that it came to be known in the biz as a Patrick Cargill part. So, we've got this sitcom. Wow. We want to cast a Patrick Cargill part. Who are we going to get if you can't get Patrick Cargill? I didn't know
That's
any
amazing.
of this. It is amazing. Anyway, we've waffled on more than enough. I'll just let you know what my history with this is.
Okay, we're closing the stable door.
We're closing the stable door. Very good one. I should insert a slam. So, I am a massive fan of John LeMessurier. And when I got back on the Goodies train many, many years ago, I really loved the characters he played in a couple of Goodies episodes. And so then I looked him up, and he was in Dad's Army, which led to me getting all the Dad's Army.
Yeah.
And then I went and got all the Hancock stuff that he was in. And then from Dad's Army, I went on to all the other David Croft and Jimmy Perry and Lloyd sitcoms and rah-rah-rah. And so here we are today watching Are You Being Served? Yeah, it's through John LeMessurier that I got to know about Tony Hancock, and they were best friends. And Tony Hancock had a very rocky life. And anyway, after he'd gotten through a couple of wives, he ended up having an affair with the lady that John LeMessurier had just married.
What?
Joan LeMessurier. And then after a couple of years, because Tony was going through a horrible breakdown and his own divorce, and then he ended up getting her sympathies, and then they were in a relationship, which should have, ruined John LeMessurier's life. So? But John LeMessurier just loved Tony so much. He goes, if it was anyone else, I'd lose it. But because it was Tony, I can understand why she fell for him and remained friends with both of them. And in fact, after Hancock died, Joan and John got back together, so I believe. And I've read her autobiography and some other things like that. So
wow. Haven't they made a film about Tony Hancock?
They totally did. With Alfred Molina, who looks exactly like Tony Hancock.
Right, okay.
And then they've done lots of dramatisations of Tony Hancock's life and documentaries and stuff like that.
Okay.
And we'll reveal more of that later.
Right.
I'll stop to take a breath and we can watch this show.
Okay.
BBC Television presents...
Hancock.
Just wondered. I just thought some of the poor devils might pass out at the sight of a needle. I've seen it before. Men built like oak trees, keeling over like saplings in a hurricane. Nasty.
Needles don't bother you, then?
Oh, me no. I've had too many of them, my dear. I've had the lot. Got arms like pincushions. Yes, I reckon I've had a syringe full of everything that's going in my time. Needles the size of drain pipes, some of them. You name it, I've had it.
Mr. Hancock, doctor's ready for you now.
Who, me? What,
yes.
now? Well, I'm in no hurry, Anybody wants to go before me, I don't mind. Does anybody want to still...
There isn't anybody else. You are the last one.
Yes. Well, this is it then, over the top. Yes. What's he like on the needle, this bloke? Has he got a steady hand?
Oh, you'll be quite all right.
He's in a good mood.
You'll be perfectly all right. Dr. McTaggart's an excellent doctor.
Dr. McTaggart, he's a Scotsman. Oh, that's fine. They're all good doctors, Scotsmen, yes. Like engineers, It's the porridge that does it. Right. Hi, carry on, Macduff. It's a Brobrich moonlich nicht the nicht this morning. There's a bonny wee lassie out there, hoots mon the new. You mind sitting down there, please, Mr. Hancock? Beg your pardon for lapsing into the vernacular, but the young lady did say you were a Scottish gentleman. Well, not all Rob Roys.
So we've just finished watching an episode of Hancock, the blood donor.
Yeah. And, well, you didn't mention in the preamble that it's black and white, so I thought I should maybe point that out to people.
Yeah.
Yeah, not that it's didn't
it's not an impediment.
Impede my enjoyment of it at all.
Oh, good.
In fact, I thought blood donation was a very up-to-date and current kind of topic for a sitcom.
Oh.
Don't you think?
I don't know. Give me a little bit more and I'll tell you what I think.
You know, people still do it.
Oh, yeah, okay, right, I'll get you.
Could have been any number of scenarios from 1961 that...
Yeah, like using a... what were those things we used to wash our clothes on that looked like a... I'm miming the motion here with the steel bit that you hold and you scrub it with the soap.
Yeah, no idea.
A washboard, I suppose. Anyway, it could have been all about that and we wouldn't be able to relate.
Yep.
But we've all been to hospitals and we've all had injections.
Yes. Yeah, so I thought from that point of view it was really good.
Excellent.
Up to date.
All right, cool. So should I just launch into... Okay. This one's nice and simple. Tony goes to donate blood. He chats to the duty nurse, then he chats to some fellow donors, then he chats to the doctor when he finally gets to see the doctor, then he gives blood, then in the recovery room after you give blood, where you get your nice cup of tea, he chats to another donor, and then he goes home, and then he wants to know what's happening with his blood that he donated, so then he keeps ringing the blood people. Yes, I know it's been 24 hours, but you must have used it. Yeah, blah, 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 blah.
He's badgering the doctor.
Exactly. And then has a bit of an incident in the kitchen getting himself a snack when he's a bit annoyed at the people on the phone and ends up cutting himself and has to go back. And he's got a very rare blood type. They only had 1 pint and it was the pint he gave yesterday.
Yep. Yeah, which worked out well because he was concerned that some riffraff might get his blood.
And he knows it's going to a good cause.
It's going to a good cause. A good home.
Oh,
yeah, that is a good summary of it.
It's pretty simple. There you go. But yeah, having that rare blood type, his whole attitude changed at that point. Like, oh yes, I've got some.
Well, he was trying to back out of it, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Despite telling them how he was a war hero and
hard as nails
and all this sort of stuff.
He's given.
When it came to the crunch, he was looking for a way out.
He totally was, and when because they pricked his thumb to just get a smear to test his blood type. And he goes, well, that was all right. I'll see you later. Thanks very much. And he thought that was it.
Yeah.
Dear.
Wait, you want a whole pint?
That's very nearly an armful. Which is one of the classic lines that always gets quoted, in the same way that in Only Fools and Horses, when Del Boy falls through the bar as one of the classic gags of British comedy. That one comes up.
Yeah. And they, in Goodnight Sweetheart, they replay that one.
Oh, do they really?
Yeah, a homage to it.
Oh. In the 40s or in the present day?
In the 40s.
Okay. They're retconning it.
Yeah.
So that happened first.
Anyway, we've spun wildly out of control.
We have there. I mean, that's all there is to the blood donor, and that's, because it's more of a character study and jokes in conversation than it is a heavy plot. It's not a big farce or anything either, so it's all pretty simple stuff. It's just about the conversations he has and the attitude he presents and how other people react to him and all those sorts of things. But should I let you say some stuff, or should I say why I like it first?
Yeah, you go first.
Are you sure?
Yep, and I'll chime in if I've got something to add.
Right, well, as I said earlier, I reckon it's a bit of a masterclass in character study. And also, I just really like seeing the sitcom form in its infancy there.
Mm-hmm.
And even so, even though it hasn't been around many years at this point and they're still sort of creating the form, it's just so good. And it's amazing. So straight out of the gate, they just design this thing that doesn't really need to be changed all that much.
Yeah. Although it's interesting that in this one, does the setting change in every episode?
In this particular series.
Whereas a modern sitcom, they would try and... Well, it seems to happen in this pretty much around the same set, say 80 or 90% of the episode, and then they might go out a bit.
True.
To a different set or something like that, depending on what's required, but it would mostly be in the same place.
Yeah.
Whereas this is something completely different each time.
Very much so. I mean, the Goodies did a bit of that. They'd be doing a different thing every week, and I'm sure there's other examples. But yeah, that's unusual. But I suppose they'd do that just because they'd moved away from Tony being in the flat with Sid. And
yeah, so it's interesting from that point of view. What else have you got?
Okay, so the Hancock character is so sharp, and I really think it's the mix of Galton and Simpson, but his comic talents in bringing it to light, with his face and mannerisms and the way he delivers it. And it's just, he blusters through these conversations. And he's sort of boasting away, but he's really gregarious as well and quite friendly. And these sorts of things.
I thought you did a really good job of describing his character. He's desperate for conversation, but then he says these things that tend to put people offside. So it's
not in a Mr. British way.
No, not. I mean, he's kind of jolly and that sort of thing, but he's so full of himself. That's a bit off-putting.
Yeah. He's very keen to put forward this impression of himself as being
make
far
people
better
like
than
him.
he is. Yeah. And it backfires terribly. But he's got that mix of insecurity and overconfidence. But you can't help liking him, I think, because there's a lot of everyone in him.
Yep.
I reckon. And so I've got some lines here.
What have you got?
Well, I don't want to ruin yours because you might have some of the same lines. So what did you like?
I think my favourite one was where he called the doctor a legalised vampire.
Yep.
Was that just after he found out he was going to have to give a full pint?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was classic. No other quotes.
Okie dokie. I've got some. And again, because Tony, thinks I'm doing the right thing here. He's trying to get some moral high ground and status by donating blood. And he just wants to benefit from being seen to give blood.
Yeah.
And so he's sort of saying, have you got a badge for this sort of thing? And that's all classic. And he wants to be portrayed as an altruistic person rather than actually having to do it. That whole badge conversation, the lapels of my suits are always the first thing to wear out. And they go, they're nothing but holes from all the badges from giving to charity.
Yeah, I wrote down here he's a bit of a Pharisee. He's recording his good deeds in his diary. So he can, whip his diary out at a later stage and, at the pearly gates.
There you go, mate.
Yeah, look. Tick, 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 tick.
Top that lot up.
Yeah. The funny thing is that the people that he's having these conversations with, one lady's been giving blood every 6 months for the last 12 years. And the other guy, I can't remember what he did, but it was something way more impressive than him rocking up for his first time.
And they put him in his place without putting him in his place.
Yeah.
Oh, it's very nice. And some other lines, because Tony's boasting about how many needles he's had and how fearless he is. Needles like drain pipes, some of them. I've had the lot.
Yeah.
And things like that. And then when he goes in to greet, he hears it's Dr. McTaggart and goes, "Oh, Dr. McTaggart, they're very good, the Scots." And then he bursts into his office in full Scottish mode going, "Hoots, toots, it's broad, nick, toot."
And the doctor goes, "Good afternoon."
So he's in full Scottish. He thinks he's being friendly and matey, but, it is a bit presumptuous.
Yes.
All right, I've got another quote here, Steve.
I've got another quote too.
Have you? Oh, good. The gag was absolutely on trend in 1961, but it still works today.
Right.
He's wishing the lady who he was talking to in the waiting room, he's wishing her luck. And he goes, "Just think Cliff Richard might get your lot." Hey! And since Cliffy's still alive, that still works, and everyone still knows who he is. I reckon a young person could watch that and think, that was an actual gag.
Yep.
So that was good.
That would still work. My other quote was, "Come on, bang it in."
You don't expect him to say that.
Yeah, well, which he says when he's cut himself and he's
flat on his back,
in hospital.
woozy.
Yeah. Come on,
bang it in.
You've got that pint of my blood. Let's make it happen, people.
And you were making a point about the looking at.
Yes, I was querying you on Tony looking straight to camera. Well, appearing to look straight to camera through pretty much a couple of scenes.
Yeah, and when he's talking to Nurse June Whitfield in the beginning, you can see he sort of looks at her and then he's looking off into the middle distance sort of thing. So, yes, he had that week been in a car accident, and so obviously he's recuperating and all this, or unconscious or whatever, couldn't learn his lines, so but the recording's booked in, so they had to use massive cue cards for him. And I think he did a remarkable job, seeing as you can see he's reading some bits off the cue cards, but to put in all the facial expressions and all that on not knowing your lines.
Yeah, wow.
It's pretty amazing. So if you notice that, it's not this is how they did it in the 60s sort of deal. That's just a one-off emergency procedure.
Did he have to get a blood transfusion as a result of the accident?
I don't know. Let's assume no. But it would have been ironic if he had. Yes. What else have you got there? Any other points?
No, come to the end.
Right. Well, basically, I'd make the argument it should go into the Hall of Fame, not only because it's got novelty value, because it's the early days of the sitcom and all that, but because of its own quality, it's got scripting quality, in terms of being able to bring about a fully realised character. It's really, really good at personal interplay between people and revealing them to be sort of who they are. And also I think it's technically not bad as well. What with getting a lot of reaction shots for when Tony's talking to the people, he's going to bring out that reaction in that person.
Yep.
And so they're on the ball technically to make sure they've got all that with virtually no technology at all. I mean, this is 2 years before Doctor Who started and they were doing it virtually live to camera. So
Yeah.
I think for the time, it's amazing and it stands up really well in terms of quality today. That's my case.
Well, I thought it was really funny.
Did you?
Yeah, I was very pleased. It was character driven, which was really nice to see. And just the quality of the gags was high all the way through. Some very quotable lines.
Yeah. Excellent. So should it go in?
Absolutely.
Oh, I'm very pleased about that. That's very good.
Yeah, I could look up some more, actually.
All right. Well, I'm also excited because I know that you're going to have a choice coming up in the next episode. So let's nick off and leave everyone to think about Hancock.
We'll sign off.
And we'll be back with something of yours.
Okay. See you, listeners.
Cheers.
Bye.
Join us next time on Sitcom Showdown when we'll be putting another 5-star episode under the microscope. And in the meantime, you can contact us with feedback on Facebook, Twitter @Sitcom Showdown, or by email sitcomshowdown@gmail.com.